What's up everybody, Kip here with Omnia Fishing. Today we've got another rod bend for you. Before we get into that, I want to ask you to please leave a comment below. What rod series should we be bending next? Could be a brand, a series of rods, or technique specific. Like today, we are doing deep crank rods. So to be honest with you, up here in the North Country, deep crankbaits aren't the most popular technique. We've got a ton of grass. There are lakes where you can find offshore humps, and those can be, deep crankbaits can be really effective. But it's not something I find in my arsenal a ton. But that being said, we know it's popular in other areas of the country, and we've got rods to service it. So without further ado, the first rod we're talking about today is the Falcon Lowrider. We've talked about them before, but this is their Composite Cranker 2. Now they have this rod in, so this is a glass rod. They have this in a straight graphite rod as well. Basically does the same thing. You'll just see a little bit different action on the wall probably. But this one came in at 7.1 ounces. That is one of the higher numbers we've seen, but largely due to the 7'6" length of this rod and the glass material. It's gonna lead to a little bit heavier weight. Let's break this one down, bring it to the rod wall. The 7'6" medium heavy moderate Composite Cranker 2 in the Falcon Lowrider series. All right, back on the wall with that Falcon Lowrider Composite Cranker 2. This is a glass rod, and you can tell this the blank towards the handle is extremely thick. This looks like your classic old school glass cranking rod. And when you give it just a little bit of power, Ethan and I were just talking about it, it almost looks fast right at the tip. That tip section is very whippy, but when you really load into it, that thing will bend. I mean, I'm seeing even a little bit of bend here, but it loads way back into the blank. So your classic crankbait rod here, this would excel from anywhere you're like 15-foot diver all the way out to like 20 feet. But you can maybe sneak in, you know, some of your mid-depth crankbaits as well. Super good price point on these rods, 130 bucks. If you're just getting into deep crankbait fishing or you don't do it often like we do up here, the Lowrider series is a good one. Full cork handle. Great looking rod. The Composite Cranker 2 in the Falcon Lowrider series. Let's move on to rod number 2. All right, rod number 2. We've got the Shimano Zodius. This is becoming a trend in these videos. We're seeing either an X-Pride or a Zodius, and for good reason. They feel incredible. This one came in at 5.8 ounces. So I wasn't anticipating to see any mind-blowing weights in this video, with most of these rods being at least 7.5, 7.6, and a lot of them being composite or glass. It's gonna lead to heavier weights, but 5.8 ounces on a 7'6" medium heavy glass rod, it's pretty good. And in hand, it feels awesome because it's got this big butt section, moves the balance point up a little bit. It feels great. This again, I said the specs, but 7.6 medium heavy. It's a moderate composite rod, and this would again excel for your deep crankbaits, 15 to 20 feet. Just a little bit different. Feels a little bit lighter in hand than that Lowrider, but it is up around 200 bucks. So let's take the Shimano Zodius 7.6 medium heavy glass rod to the rod wall. All right, we're on the wall here with that 7'6" Shimano Zodius. Right away, feels awesome. A little bit different feel than that Lowrider. I would call this more of your new school glass rod, if that makes any sense. A little bit less thick. It is composite, so there's a little bit of graphite, a little bit of glass in here. And I'm digging this long handle. I feel like if you're cranking all day and you've got a little stubby butt section, can't tuck it underneath your arm there, it could be a little uncomfortable, but this fits perfect when tucked under your arm. So into the action, I would say it's a little bit more true to that moderate bend. I'm not seeing as quick of an action as that Lowrider was initially, and when you bend it, it loads up super deep. So again, you know, something I haven't mentioned is people prefer graphite, people prefer glass. I tend to lean towards a glass rod just because when I get a bite and I sweep a hook set on them, I know for the most part they're not going anywhere. That rod is bent, folded in half. It can be really hard for them to shake those hooks. So this is my style of crankbait rod here. Again, don't do it a ton, but this is one I'd definitely be interested in. The 7.6 medium heavy glass Shimano Zodius. Next up, we have one of Patrick Walter's signature series rods in the Daiwa Tatula Elite. Patrick's good at many things, but a couple of standouts: jerkbait, crankbait fishing. He's really good with those treble hook baits, and this is one of the rods that he's designed. So this is a 7'6", it's heavy power, the regular bend. It's rated all the way up to 2 ounces. So if you wanted something in that closer to 20-foot diver depth, this could definitely handle it. And a regular bend is kind of confusing. It's not necessarily your moderate, it's not your fast, it's somewhere in the middle. Some rod companies use it, some don't, but that's why we got the rod wall. We're gonna go check it out. The 7'6" heavy regular bend in the Daiwa Tatula Elite. All right, here we are with that Patrick Walters Daiwa Tatula Elite 7'6" heavy glass cranking rod, regular bend. And this is a kind of an interesting one, a little bit shorter handle than that Zodius, could give or take. The full cork handle makes up for it for me. But that regular bend, it's definitely different than some of the other. It's actually closer to that lowrider that we first looked at. Just imparting a little bit of power, you get kind of a fast action. And then when you load up, like simulating a sweeping hook set, you are deep into that blank, and it's got some power. So if you're throwing those bigger plugs with, you know, size 2, size 1 hooks on it, get a little more beef to them, this would be a great choice. I've also seen, you know, one of Seth Fighter's favorite rods on earth is the Daiwa Tatula Standard Cork Edition. They've got a 7-foot heavy glass, regular bend. It's their chatterbait rod, but he uses that for square bills and basically all of his crankbait needs. This kind of reminds me of that rod. A little bit more length, a little bit more expensive, but similar. So I could see you wanting to throw, you know, maybe some square bills on it too, your bigger 2.0s or something like that. But cool rod here, interesting action, could get away with doing a bunch of different cranking applications with this rod. The 7'6" heavy Daiwa Tatula Elite Patrick Walters cranking rod. All right, the first 3 rods we talked about were, I would say, more of your versatile deep cranking rods, if that makes sense, like 7'6"-ish, medium heavy power rods. Could do a little bit of, you know, mid-diving crankbaits, could also do some of your deep diving stuff. These next 2 rods are not like that. These are close to 8-footers, heavy power, and they're meant for your big plugs, your 10XDs, your Azumas, your C25 6 cents crankbaits, whatever crankbait you enjoy that dives 20 foot plus. These are the rods to do it with. A couple of our favorites here, starting with the 7'10" extra heavy, moderate fast St. Croix Victory. This is a graphite rod, so it's not going to feel quite the same as the rods we've talked about thus far. Those were all glass or glass composite rods. This is straight graphite. Because of that, despite it being 7'10", it is actually the lightest rod we've talked about. It is coming in at 5.2 ounces. We've seen flipping rods that are heavier than this. Pretty ridiculously lightweight for a rod of this length. They also upgrade you to a full cork handle, upgrade in my opinion. And this is a pretty cool rod. If you're into seriously deep cranking, this would be one that I'd look at. But let's take a look at the action, the 7'10" extra heavy, moderate St. Croix Victory. All right, forgot to mention the weight on that Tatula Elite. Came in at 6 ounces, pretty respectable for a 7'6" heavy glass rod. All right, here we are with that 7'10" extra heavy, moderate fast St. Croix Victory. This is the longest rod that I've personally bent on this rod wall. Feels weird seeing the tip of the rod way out there, but just bending it a little bit, that is not your typical extra heavy tip on a rod. It's definitely a crankbait rod, but it is faster than the rods we've talked about so far. With it being a full graphite rod, the action, it's just hard to make a super moderate graphite rod. And this one will definitely still handle your deep crankbaits. Once you load into it, it is a little bit more moderate, but it's the fastest rod we've talked about, for sure. But if you're looking, again, for a rod to throw your big 10XDs, other crankbaits in that realm, this 7'10" length is gonna be able to help you whip that big plug out there, get the distance you need to get the bait into the desired depth, essentially. So great rod here from St. Croix, extremely light for the length, again, of this rod. I'm harping on that, but that was impressive to me. So cool rod here from St. Croix. If you're in the market for a big plug rod, this is definitely one to check out. All right, last up in this week's rod bend is a rod that you guys have actually seen before, but you saw it, if you've been around a while, you saw it in a swim bait rod bend. This is the Cash-In John Cruz Icon Series. This is this big bait rod. This is a 7'10" medium heavy mod fast, again, all graphite, and it's ridiculously light. This thing feels incredible for a swim bait, deep plug, big bait rod. Came in at 5 ounces flat, the lightest rod we've seen in this video, and I think it can do a little bit of everything. We were impressed with it on the swim bait rod for your lighter glide baits. Like, this is rated up to 3 ounces. I'd say 3 ounces is absolutely its max, but for your Chad Shad style or class of swim baits, it's a great option. Also think it would be a killer deep crankbait rod. Again, similar to that St. Croix, 10XDs, Azumas. This rod could do it. So let's bring it to the rod wall. John Cruz Icon Series from Cash-In. All right, we're back with that Cash-In Icon Series, John Cruz signature. And this is, again, their 7'10", medium heavy, mod fast, all graphite. And I just talked about with that St. Croix rod how it's difficult to make a moderate rod out of pure graphite. This thing does it really well. You can tell right away it's got a much stiffer tip section than that St. Croix and some of the glass rods we talked about, which tends to lean for a more moderate bend. So just bending the tip, you can see it doesn't have that quick tip like some of the other rods did, but loading into it, it still has that nice true curve to it that is gonna land fish with treble hooks, especially your deep plugs, also swim baits. This would be a killer swim bait rod as well. And that's what he designed it for. So the 7'10" medium heavy mod fast Cash-In Icon John Cruz Signature Series. Great swim bait rod, great big plug rod. That is gonna wrap it up for this week's Rod Bend series. If you're enjoying what we're doing, please be sure to leave us a comment on what we should be doing next, if we missed any rods, and be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you want more, and we'll see you next week back at the rod wall.